where the ethical piece comes in is both NATO and the EU are solidly grounded in the ethic of solidarity. That is, both of these institutions take as their starting point that the institution exists to promote solidarity among its members. The European Union does this through Article 2 of the Treaty on European Union. NATO does this certainly most famously through Article 5, to a lesser extent through Article 4 and Article 3. The idea that when you're part of this institution, your problems are my problems. If something impacts you, it impacts me. If you are attacked or you are facing difficulty, I am obligated to render aid and assistance to you as if it was something that was impacting me. So the way you hold these organizations together has always been the promise of solidarity. The ethical component of it is your problems are my problems. Certainly during the Cold War, you had an existential threat, an existential military and ideological threat to the West, where it was easy to forge those bonds of solidarity. I teach history of the Cold War for Harvard Extension. Had a class last night. We were talking a bit about this question of solidarity. The idea that sooner or later in the 1950s or the 1960s, there was a sense that the Soviet Union wouldn't just simply stop at one or two countries. Ultimately, for it to achieve its objectives, it would have to take control of Europe as a whole and then be able to strike the United States. So that enabled countries and their populations to understand this sense of solidarity, that Germany's problem is Spain's problem, is Italy's problem, is Britain's problem, is Canada's problem, is the United States' problem. Similarly, the U.S. got, and we sometimes forget that today, it was the United States which helped to get what is now the European Union started. And again, by promoting this idea of solidarity, that West Europeans faced with the threat of the Soviet Union could outclass any single European country by far, and the only way for Western Europe to consolidate itself would be to promote integration, and part of the way of promoting integration was promoting this sense of solidarity. And we've seen this all the way through to the current period. Why do taxpayers in Germany or Sweden contribute more? Why do other countries in Europe benefit more from EU stabilization and development funds? You might have a taxpayer in Sweden saying, why am I paying for roads in Portugal or Greece? But the sense that, well, you're paying for development there, and then in turn, they will be doing things for you. They will be buying your goods and services. They will be, as their economies grow, they will contribute, so on and so forth. So this ethical obligation of solidarity is written into these two organizations. And of course, it's been something that political leaders will always bandy about. We are together, we are united, so on and so forth. The pandemic response in 2020 has damaged that ethic of solidarity, because the pandemic, as it first arrived in Italy and Spain, as it began to spread to other European countries, as it then arrived in the United States, the idea that what affects you should affect me, and I should be giving you aid and assistance based upon this ethic of solidarity, based upon this strategic logic of solidarity, eroded very quickly. The initial response, as different countries within the Euro-Atlantic sphere were impacted by coronavirus, was to put borders back up, was to institute export controls, was to say, you need equipment, but we may need it, and so we're not going to allow it to be exported to you. And what you've had, at least in those first critical weeks in February and in March, was countries within the Euro-Atlantic world not only simply not rendering aid. So the first ethic of solidarity should be, you're in trouble, I have something I can help you, so I will give you masks, ventilators, spare capacity. We will deploy people to help you. But you not only did not have the provision of aid, you had countries beginning to take steps which actively injured other members of the community, which is, we're not simply going to give you aid, but we will take steps in our own country which are going to actively cause the citizens of your country greater harm or greater tragedy. And when you have that, and it's a natural reaction, it's the countervailing ethic of sovereignty, which is that on the one hand, you have the ethic of solidarity, what affects you affects me, and then you have the ethic of sovereignty that says the price of sovereignty, the price of self-determination is you take responsibility for yourself, for your own, and therefore you don't have a right to make claims on others or those claims lessen against the claims of my own citizens.